Alright, we are streaming. Start up the video.
After the conclusion of Invincible Season 2 and the recent hype of One Punch Man Season 3, me and my GOAT Professor Fiction have decided to join forces like Bang and Bomb and answer the question, could Garou hunt Invincible? Now, for this video, we have two specific rules. One, no Cosmic Garou, as obviously that version of Garou would obliterate anyone in the Invincible verse. And two, Mark will be at his absolute peak, meaning at the end of Invincible, so I don't want to hear anything from anyone saying that I'm talking about a young Mark and, oh, don't march solos. Anyway, with that aside, I hope you guys enjoy. Now, since Season 2 literally just finished and I watched it like less than a week ago, I'm going to talk about Mark. Now, Invincible is a verse that's definitely known for its superhuman qualities, but Invincible, surprisingly, is a verse that doesn't really have that many AP feats. We have things like Omni-Man saying he could destroy a meteor the size of Texas, which is arguably... That aside, I hope you guys enjoy. Now, since Season 2 literally just finished and I watched it like less than a week ago...
Alright, just testing the audio, guys. Just testing the audio.
Arguably moon level depending on calculations, but if we're going off of the actual source material and Mark at his best, he would just upscale from this one feat of him plus Omni-Man plus another Viltrumite, combining all their power to destroy a planet. However, in order to do this, they needed to hit a specific point in the planet, and all three of them needed to do this or else they would just get completely nailed.
These three basically had a three-way QuickTime event and had to mash every single button at the same time, and they still passed out after the fact. Speed for Invincible is probably the most controversial thing to talk about, as many people would often bring up various massively faster than light feats, like Omni-Man flying to the Thraxa planet at the end of Season 1. There's many calculations of this feat, and depending on different interpretations, like in the show, they talk about it's many galaxies away. In the comics and in the guidebooks, they say it's possibly in another supercluster. However, that itself is more up to interpretation and kind of controversial, as they reference the same supercluster we're in. Either way, at the highest end, it tends to reach several million to billion times the speed of light. For something maybe more consistent, we know characters like Alan can fly from the edge of the solar system to Earth in a matter of minutes, which has been calculated to several thousand times the speed of light. You could use the Guide to the Invincible Universe to say they all kind of cap at the speed of light, since when Omni-Man was traveling across the universe to the Thraxa planet, it was stated he reached almost the speed of light, then was kind of time jumping or time dilating his way across the rest of the galaxy. However, the Guide to the Invincible Universe has a lot of contradictions and inconsistencies, such as saying that Omni-Man's peak lifting strength is only 100 tons, whereas we've seen people like Mark and Anissa, two Viltrumites significantly weaker than Omni-Man, lift far more than this.
As for hacks, unfortunately, Mark is not all that special, besides super strength, super speed, and flight, and also having insane reserves when enraged. But besides that, there's really nothing too crazy to note for Mark in terms of hacks, and to put it short, he's just a big strong dude who can fly. Yeah, now let's move on to Garou. Now, although the version of Garou we're talking about isn't the one in his cosmic state, Garou is still clearly a monster even without the power of God. Huh, see what I did there? Cause he's a monster. Yeah, I'm funny.
Good one, Ty. You got him.
Even before getting to his peak transformation, a Garou who was just starting to perfect his fist was capable of splitting Sage Centipede in half. This is the same individual who's larger than Elder Centipede and can move at ridiculous speeds, to the point where calculations have this centipede moving at mountain level. They pretty much applied this but to Sage Centipede, who is way larger than Elder Centipede. And along with things such as Orochi's Gaia Cannon, we have Sage Centipede reaching those multi-continental to small planetary level ranges, and Garou legit one-shots him, like karate chops his exoskeleton. Garou would proceed to go through a whole other transformation and would legit have a special move where he would affect the Earth's core itself, that being with the move Extreme Fa Jin. This should just upscale from the other attacks I've talked about before, but this move is a little bit interesting since it technically bypasses your durability.
As for Garou's speed, we've seen that human Garou, even at 1 HP, paralyzed, poisoned, and burned, and 0 EVs or IVs reacting to light speed Genos. And when he fought Platinum S and Flashy Flash, they created light constructs in the sky. This feat, at the very bare minimum, has been calculated at upwards of 4 times the speed of light. And mind you, bro would gain some way more more power-ups, plus the ability to fly and launch himself in the sky with Iron Man thrusters thanks to monsterization. Garou at the very worst should be multiple times into the speed of light, if not dozens of times, just based on the fact that he blitzed Platinum S at the end of their fight. Garou was a relatively normal dude, at least before he monsterizes, but through martial arts he's able to pull off some pretty superhuman things. With the water stream, he's able to nullify and deflect attacks with twice their strength. With the whirlwind iron cutting fist, he's able to launch blasts of air from mid-distance. He's able to create shockwaves in your body and straight up ignore durability with certain techniques. Thanks to monsterization, he has regeneration, energy blasts, and the ability to fly. He also has a superhuman level of instinct and awareness where his body can move on his own and he can naturally pick up on fighting styles on the fly, at one point almost mastering a whole new martial art after just reading it one time. This doesn't just apply to martial arts either, as Garou spent his entire hero hunt adapting to all sorts of different fighting styles, like Tank Top Master's brawling, Watchdog Man's beast-like fighting styles, master level fencers and marksmen. After he defeated Death Gatling, he even says he pretty much figured out how to fight people with guns now and he doesn't have to worry about it anymore. Most notably, when he's fighting the hero Golden Ball, he calculates the trajectory of all of his ricocheting bullets without getting hit a single time, which we'll see is notable later. But not only did he do this, but he did this in near pitch darkness as well, just guessing where the bullets would end up using his intelligence and instinct.
Yeah, what's good, man?
Now let's get into the matchup.
Does my voice interrupt the noise of what
far off in terms
this?
of attack potency, but it's
Are
clear
the
that
audios
Garou does
like
have the
matching
advantage
up
over Mark.
badly,
While
or is it
Mark
good?
is barely reaching that small planetary tier, Garou is karate chopping
What's good,
characters'
people?
entire bodies
Cool.
who are reaching these tiers.
Garou's
Glad you
skills,
like it.
especially
Can
compared
you
to
guys
Mark,
drop a
are
like? I
kind
think
of
it will help me
insane
get
when
like
you really
more
think
people
about
here.
it. Thrag was super hyped up for being the most skilled and deadly
This is how it
Viltrumite,
looks
and when
right
he's teaching
now.
his
I'm
kids
just
how
gonna
to
add some
fight, he's like,
VFX and
expose your opponent by hitting their weak point. Like, come on, bro. This is what Garou does every day. Garou's able to bring no less than 12 different martial arts to bear at the same time, and it honestly doesn't really matter if Mark is that much faster, because Garou could kind of end it in one hit. Not only does Extreme Fajin straight up ignore durability, literally hitting your internal organs
Let me
with
turn this down a
multi-continental
little bit.
levels of force, but Garou can also hit Mark back with his own force using the water stream, and we've seen that people in Invincible can cause severe damage even if they're relative to one another. Garou can also using the Sky Aura Ripping Fist, which when he was fighting Bang, someone he was relative to, was able to one-shot him just by grazing him a single time, meaning even if Garou didn't get a direct hit on Invincible, if he just grazed him, the shockwaves would spread through his body and destroy all of his bones.
But what if Mark got really mad? Anyway, even if Mark was to get really mad, Garou's adaptation would catch up faster than Mark's rage would overcome Garou, and the gap would slowly be made further and further.
If you're
Mark,
wondering why the
until
ground
it's
jumps
damn
here,
near
it's because this is a
impossible for him to even
screen
get a hit on Garou.
for impact.
Garou as well with
You
one
use
simple
screen
reflection
shakes
hit
for
to Mark's
impact,
face would just
it helps
damn near
really
kill him.
well.
Remember, invincible characters, when they are a lot weaker or are hit with a much stronger force, can't really do anything to hurt or defend against said force. Like, this man Red Rush was breaking his hands trying to like flail at them against Omni-Man. Mark's only win con would be if he was just bloodlusted and just tried blitzing and one-shotting Garou while Garou would stand there menacingly. Like if Garou was like really cocky for some reason. But especially given the version of Garou we're talking about, this is the monsterized version. This is the one that's off of instinct, wants to fight strong people. If anything, Mark coming at Garou and approaching him this way would be kind of similar to how Garou approached King, where he was like, oh, okay, someone strong wants to come at me. And he would proceed to just look at every single possibility and prepare for the worst.
Yeah, man, let's not forget that this Mark guy, he happens to be one of these guys called superheroes, which, you know, Garou kind of just hates these guys off rip. He's not going to look at this guy and be like, oh, go about your day, bro, I'll catch you around. Like, he wants smoke. He wants smoke.
No, not really. Did you change your name?
For those of you that are talking about, you know, oh, Mark might get
Wait,
mad.
what do you mean,
Mark
what?
might get a little mad.
Oh, are you talking about the video?
Garou literally mutates
Did
his
you change your
entire
name?
body
I don't
when he
really
gets mad.
remember
So
your
yeah,
name.
Mark might get a little stronger. Garou's just going to grow 2 more arms to just beat his ass even more.
And also, it's just gonna be crazy when Invincible tries to go for a
What are they talking
suplex, and then Garou's like, Garou style, Invincible Slam, or some shit, and then just like does a way better version of what Invincible does. Like, anything Mark can do, Garou can do better, and Garou has like 10 plus different ways to destroy Mark, whereas Mark has maybe 1 win con. I'm giving this fight to Garou 9 out of 10 times. Mark gets folded.
Go subscribe to my channel And check out this collab we did on my channel if you like Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, oh that video's awesome. Yeah, go check it out.
Yeah.
These ads, bro. What else? Could Garou hunt All Might? I mean, from the Invincible video, he definitely could, let's be honest. Toji versus Garou. Let's watch this. This isn't bad.
Bro, this dude Zazo called me mid-recording, and I just have to reset all of this. These two masterclass hunters surprisingly don't get compared often in a versus battle setting, which I find to be very strange considering both Garou and Toji Zenin in a way have a very similar archetype within their
The
own
animation?
universes as the type of
Can
character
I
they are.
see?
Both are
Oh,
the
you can't
physical
see?
anomalies
Wait.
that almost act as a force
Oh,
of
oh, you
nature
want me to
rather than
play
your
it?
average foe. In this scenario, Toji
Here
will
it
be
is.
given the objective to assassinate Garou. Now, there are a couple variations of both
It's just a
characters,
simple
so to be more
punch.
specific,
He just
we are
punches
pretty
the
much giving
dragon.
Toji what he was
I'm
given in
going
his
to
fight with
just add some
Gojo, so his little
defects
worm,
maybe
his
and
chain,
try
and the soul
to
split
just
katana
make it
along
look
with his
somewhat
block.
cool.
Unlike in that fight, we're going to be saying that this Toji is not rusty, and he shook off the rust right before fighting Garou. So I'm going to be doing my best to try and break down a hypothetical prime Toji. And Garou, who already to begin with has multiple forms, and in all honesty, it gets more and more ridiculous as they keep coming.
Alright.
Like, for reference, we can have one form that changes his eye red and, changes his hair red, gives him little fangs. And then some transformations turns him into a gigantic monster that is a threat to the
Okay.
cosmos itself. When it comes
Nice,
to
very
Garou's
smooth
transformations,
punch.
there's
Yeah,
really no
thanks.
in between, so to
I
be more
had to
specific, we're not going
transition
to be
it,
using
kinda.
transformed Garou here.
So,
We will be
what
only
is it?
using
This,
the first two seasons
this
of
punch
One Punch Man, as this
transitions
is the
into this,
only version
like,
of
pretty
Garou that
flawlessly,
Toji
I'd
has
say.
any chance
But
of
this
beating.
last frame
So to be
looks
more
so
specific,
bad,
the video
but
is
because
could
it's
Prime
moving fast,
Toji
you don't
hunt human
realize it.
Garou? Firstly, we shall
So,
talk
yeah.
about Garou because not only is this my goat, my glorious
Alright,
king, and I
where is
aspire
it?
to be more like him
This-
more than Toji, and regardless of who you think wins this scenario, Garou's physique is superior. Anywho, Garou, despite only being a human in his universe, is someone who resembles more of a monster.
Alright.
He was Bang's #1
So
prodigy,
just
and he
these
picked up
rocks
and nearly
flying up just for
perfected
a
the
bit
flowing
more
street
added,
rock smashing
I guess,
fist. But of course,
explosion.
if need be, he'll use his mastery of hand-to-hand to
Alright.
redirect his opponent's power
We're gonna
back
have
at his
some
opponent.
smoke as
This
well.
is really what the style is all about, allowing you to
let
specifically
me...
send back double the force of your
This
opponent's
is probably gonna
attacks,
be a
along
pretty
with hitting
short
specific
stream,
vital
I'd say.
points to take you down.
One frame,
He
man,
precisely
oh my
hits
god.
and takes down his opponent, and we see as he fights more heroes, he's able to
Alright,
counter
this rock
brawlers,
comes off the
swordsmen, and
screen
even
here.
firearms as a whole.
Okay,
Garou
that should look a
himself did
bit
most
better.
of this when he was half dead and poisoned, by the way. This not only speaks to his ridiculous endurance and how much pain Garou could really take before collapsing, but also his adaptation, which
So,
might
this
just be
frame, what
Garou's
can we
greatest
add
strength. Garou
to make
improves
this
within
look
pretty
better?
much every fight he participates in, implementing your own
The
moves against you.
rank
A prime
in
example of
your
this is Garou utilizing
give it
Watchdog
to
Man's
me.
moves
Yeah.
on Genos to
I'm
throw
the
him
rank
off after
rank
he just got
maker
no div
in
by
this.
Watchdog.
Oh wait,
He
really?
goes on to show this ability
Wait,
way
rank
more when he
maker.
becomes a monster, but again, we can't really use those
Wait,
instances
say
because
hi in
that
the
is a
Discord
stronger
and I'll
Garou.
realize.
He
Say
dropped
hi in
Tank
the
Top Master
Discord.
in his first
And then
encounter
I'll
along
see.
with most of the Tank Top students, and he nearly defeated Metal Bat without taking a single blow before almost dying from an off guard. He managed to somehow survive a fight with Watchdog Man, survive a fight with Saitama, and somehow clutched a 1v8 scenario with A and B class heroes. This dude is a
Alright.
fighting prodigy, but even excluding and disregarding Garou's skills, he has some pretty ridiculous physical stats as well. We know S-class heroes bare minimum are capable of dealing with city level threats, and Garou was able to beat down 2 of them. This isn't inconsistent as well, given that Season 1 Genos was able to destroy a chunk of a mountain with similar levels of energy. And it's actually stated that Genos in this panel blew away multiple mountains when shooting this, so this feat could actually
Let me
end up being...
see
But
here.
mind you, even
If I-
Garou at like 1 HP is deflecting and combating a much stronger Genos than the one from Season 1. So even if you don't think they're mountain level by this point, baseline they are
that looks
far
just
power
weird.
creeping characters
This
or versions
shading
of
is
Genos
not
that
that
are
good.
already in this tier.
Not much
Genos
I can
by
really
Season
add
1 should
here.
already be city level, and then he gets upgrades, and then this same upgraded Genos struggles with
Okay.
a weakened Garou.
Hold on.
As far as speed goes, I feel like it's even easier to
Okay,
break
what
down
can we
since we're
add
also
here? Well,
using
his,
Genos as a measuring stick as well.
his
Jacket
power,
Genos
what
is
is it?
far faster than the one
What
from the
frame
beginning
is
of
this
Season
on?
2, and this same Genos is capable of reacting to
What
actual
frame?
light-based lasers, and he
Frame
seems to be able to
6.
dodge
Frame
multiple
5
of
is
these
his
at
head,
once.
so we can use
However,
frame
if you
5.
wanted to downplay Garou and
I would
say he
say.
doesn't reach light speed until
Let me
his later
see.
variations due to Flashy Flash only being light speed, he
Did
should
you
bare
say the
minimum
thing in
be
the Discord
upscaling
yet?
from
Let
Season
me
1
see it.
Genos, like I said,
see it.
who, mind you, can fight Deep Sea King, who's capable of blocking Lightning Max's lightning fast kick.
No,
and
you haven't
this
said
isn't an
anything yet.
exaggeration or taken out of context, like for example, Kandaka's light speed shoes from Sakamoto days. Max's power powers are
Alright.
literally lightning based, and he
Hold on,
accelerates
hold on,
at these
hold
same
on.
speeds and gets
Okay,
mistaken
so
for
charges
actual
back,
strikes of lightning.
punches.
A
So
dehydrated
we're
Deep
going
Sea King can react and
to
even
add
blitz this
this
version of Max. The Sea
add
King is
this
relative to
little
the Sky
thing
King,
here.
who got obliterated by Melzagard, and Melzagard in his Berserker
Okay,
state was
so
being reacted to by a base Metal Bat.
the
Meanwhile,
outside is going to
Garou in
be
Season
very
2 is
dark
reacting
blue.
to a pumped up Metal Bat who should be way faster. So even if
Very
you don't think
dark
Garou
blue.
is light
Oh
speed
yeah,
by
yeah,
Season
that's
2,
pretty
he's
good, I would
blitz
say.
level differences above the speed of lightning. Now with the Hero
Should
Hunter
we
out
use
of
a
the way,
different
let's talk
marker is
about
the
the
question,
Sorcerer killing
or
Calamity,
a different
Toji.
pen?
Now Toji, unlike Garou who has a sense of justice he wants to enforce, Toji mainly does this for the bag. However, despite fighting for different reasons, Toji is still
Brush.
like Garou and a
How
cold-blooded
good is
monster. He
brush?
does whatever it takes to hit his mark, carrying firearms, a katana that can cut your very soul, and
How
a
good
chain
would
that is
brush be?
seemingly never ending. He keeps all this with a little worm around his neck that is so goddamn ugly. I hope Garou is at least able to kill this thing in this versus battle, cause goddamn, I need him erased from existence.
Damn,
And I
bro
know
wants to
motherfuckers
kill
be
it
like,
just
oh my
because
god, it's
it's
so
ugly,
cute.
bro.
No, this
That's
motherfucker's
crazy.
not cute, bro.
Alright,
Anywho,
anyways.
despite having weapons and being kinda just big strong, Toji's physical prowess is unparalleled. When it comes to pure
Alright.
hand-to-hand, I feel like he's just a more mature version of a Wakened Maki who's capable of utilizing precognition and fights with hand-to-hand mastery. She, like Garou, has learned from different fighting styles and
Okay.
even adapted and
Wait, this
implemented
this is
those
gonna
same
go in
styles that
layer
she fought
6,
against
right?
into her own.
Because
She also should just be
should
more
it?
skilled than the likes
I
of
don't
Todo, who
know. I don't
himself
know.
is stated to have mastery in close quarters combat.
Let me just
Toji
put
in
it
his
in layer 6. I
introduction was
can add
capable
order
of killing
later if I
both
want.
Gojo and Getzo, who by
Safer
this
to
point
do
were the
this.
strongest in their. This doesn't mean much aside from maybe upscaling from Yuki, but it's possible she
Sorry
could
for
just be
keep on moving this.
stronger
Can you
later
guys
on in
hear
the
this good?
series. But
I want to
Yuki
make
is
sure
still
you
the same
can.
person who could
So
fight
if you can hear
Kenjaku,
this
and
good.
that's the same guy who can react to point
Gonna
blank
paste
piercing
this
blows.
back.
This attack's initial speed comes out to around the speed of sound, and Kenjaku dodges this multiple times at point blank range. Toji as well should be upscaled from Awakened Maki, who's capable of evading a Mach 3 Naoya. We can't quantify her exact speed, but based on the statement and how she managed to
Okay.
evade him, there's calculations on her feat against Naoya coming out to around almost Mach 6,
I'm
which is
gonna
nearly
try to
2
make this
times the
look good.
initial speed he was going at. I
Keyword
think
try.
baseline Toji should be more than capable of moving at these speeds, and we even have him in the anime evading new lightning at point blank ranges. Now this feat is iffy as for one, it's not in the manga at all, and two, Nue more than likely isn't shooting literal lightning because we have later on characters doing that, and I don't think we're gonna say Kashimo and Nue have the same attack speed. But even with these factors in mind, Toji dodging Nue's lightning comes out to around Mach 228 or massively hypersonic. In my opinion, it's a little bit harder
I
to
think that
rank
looks good.
JJK any higher than hypersonic, but for this video, I'll be nice and say he managed to dodge lightning in his Edo state, therefore in his prime, he's even faster. Sorry for rambling about speed there, it's just super annoying when it comes to JJK, but attack potency is a lot simpler.
Yeah,
Toji should just
speed
be
in
physically
JJK
hitting
is
harder
not
than
it.
Yuta, who is able to withstand Ryu's cursed energy blast.
Okay.
Based on the craters that Ryu can make
This is
and
how
the
it
amount of energy
looks.
he
Now we need to
himself can
draw
withstand,
this.
the amount of energy he outputs
Draw
comes
this
out to around
again.
small town level. And
Okay.
no, I'm not gonna
The
say
hand is
Toji is
going back,
island
so it's
level
gonna
because
get
he beats
smaller
up
every time.
Dagon, because that's just not how JJK scaling works. We can't scale Toji to
The
Dagon
ore
or
is gonna get
Jogo's
smaller every
cursed
time, my
energy
bad.
reinforcement because he himself doesn't have cursed
Alright.
energy to begin with. He's an
We're gonna go
anomaly of
like
his own
this.
series, and unironically
Boom
because
Bop's
of this,
pow.
it
What do you
prevents
guys
him to
like
be
think
scaled any higher
it would
because
be
we
good
can't
for me to
apply him to
animate?
most methods that we
If
usually
I was
go
supposed
about
to
scaling
animate something,
JJK.
what would that be?
God, I was fully expecting to stutter there. That was peak improv right there, right chat? I think saying Toji's physical strength and Ryu's Granite Blast being in a similar tier isn't ridiculous to say, especially when Yuta, who is physically weaker than Toji and
Okay.
Maki, is capable of blocking some of these blasts
Oh
partially
yeah,
with his
right.
bare
That's true.
hands. However, in my opinion, this is
Alright.
the best and most consistent scaling you can get for Toji's physicals. With his tools, he has means to take down opponents much more powerful than himself,
I don't
which
think
is
I
how
can
he always
actually
comes
get
off
this to
so
look
damn
like water.
terrifying. But let's
That'd be
see
pretty
if the
hard to
human
do,
anomaly
but
within the Jujutsu world could
I'll
take
just
down
make
the
it look
human monster
fluid.
within the One Punch Man
Try to
universe.
make it look fluid.
When comparing their direct skills, I think Garou has a clear edge in hand-to-hand here.
I can't see
Reflecting
any of the
Toji's own
comments. I
power
don't know if you
along
guys
with
are
any
seeing
of his
anything.
attacks
Let
that he
me
throws is going to be a big problem
click
for
back on
Toji.
this.
Toji could maybe predict
Okay,
his
doesn't
movements
seem
with
like this guy said
precognition
anything.
or apply Garou's moves like how Maki can apply certain fighting styles. But not only does Garou have better precognition, as he's capable of seeing what you could possibly do off of your center of gravity, but Garou as well has
Okay.
not only implemented basic fighting styles, but even fighting styles that are
Boom.
completely inhumane and counter practical fighting styles.
Boom.
You see, martial arts are usually built for, human to human combat,
Okay, this
which
is
is
just a
why when
slow
Watch Dog
part of the
Man uses
process,
this
but
style on
it will
Garou, it
make it
throws
look
him
good, I
off
think.
so bad because he's not used to fighting something like this. And despite encountering a style he had no means of countering, he just adapted this to his own arsenal. I'm sure
Okay.
Toji is a master martial artist, and for all we know, he could be the Master Roshi or Jackie Chun of JJK. But we just don't know how much of a mastery he has in specifically, and all we know is that he has hands, but to what degree. As far as just pure physical stats goes as well, if we were to downplay Garou and highball Toji, Garou should still be significantly faster. And Toji
Alright.
upscaling from Ryu's
So
Granite
this
Blast
should
is
get a
not
bit
nearly to the
smaller
same degree as Garou upscaling from Genos' Blast from
since
Season
the
1.
hand is
The
going
gap
back, as I
between
said.
Toji and Ryu is much smaller, meanwhile Garou and Genos have a
Okay.
much bigger gap.
You see how
And
it
even if we
kinda goes
ignored those
backwards now?
factors, just comparing
So
the two
let's
feats
do
that we are
that.
upscaling the characters from, Genos' casual incineration
Now we
blasts are
trace this
probably
again.
stronger than Ryu's average Granite Blast. Which just goes to show you the gap between One Punch Man and JJK in general. Garou should be
Okay.
much stronger, much faster, and should just incapacitate Toji with really little to no effort. If the Soul Split Katana somehow lands,
Let's
then
get a
that
rough
would be
trace
pretty
of
bad
this
for
and then we'll
Garou,
do
and
the
I don't think
darkenings
he has any
after.
way of countering that. But I do think Garou isn't an idiot, and he would more than likely disarm Toji before it got to that point, and he would put him out of commission.
Okay, that's done. Go to the home page. Let's see what else we can watch. Um uh Let me see here. Can I watch crazy thumbnail? Anyways, what can I watch? Uh Wait, rank maker. I don't know if you're still here, but I'm pretty sure I remember you. I just don't remember your name. I really don't, sadly. Come on, man. What can I animate? I mean, what can I watch? What is this thumbnail, bro? God damn. Baku versus Genos. Is there anything else cool to watch? Everyone, nah, that would be a spoiler. Since characters I don't even know about. Should we watch? Um, damn. Every anime power system? Okay, it's not bad, I guess.
Anime is packed to the brim with unique aspects that make each show incredibly interesting. Whether it be something like One Piece known for its story and world building, or an anime like Demon Slayer praised for its animation, the one thing
Okay.
that every good shonen anime has in common is a solid power system. Not every series has a great one, but all the major shonen animes do at least have a foundational system that the rest of the world can be built around. Some shows put more emphasis on the strict
Alright.
rules and details in their systems, while others leave things a bit more open-ended, and for the most part, that's totally fine, since these systems all play a massive role in the story that an anime is trying to tell. However, objectively, some of these systems are just better than the others, in my opinion at least. Regardless
Okay.
of how they fit into the world, there's just some systems like Nen from Hunter x Hunter which is incredibly detailed and interesting, but then there's also stuff like Quirks and MHA which don't really have a lot of depth. Now that's not always a bad thing, but personally, I find that
Alright,
animes with
hold
more detailed and
on.
well thought out power systems tend to be far more interesting across every fight scene, especially because us as viewers can look at the characters using their powers and be able to tell exactly it is what they're doing and how they're doing it. So going off that, I want to rank every major anime power system in shonen to showcase which ones are absolutely peak and which ones are just okay. But to actually have a consistent rating for each anime, I've devised a grading rubric based on 3 distinct categories. Depth, which is how unique and complex each system is without making things too confusing or too simple. Structure, which are the fundamental rules of the system and how characters can consistently work within those rules in a
Alright.
fair way. And aura, which is just how cool each system is.
Boom.
Aura is definitely more of an opinion, but at the end of the day, great power systems obviously should be visually and narratively striking, so I think it makes a lot of sense to include it. Each of those 3 categories will be worth 10 points, adding up to a max total of 30 that each system could potentially get. Also, if this feels familiar, the Weeb Commander did do a top 10 anime power systems a while ago and also used a rating scale of 30, and I played around with the max totals and grading rubric a bit, but 30 total just does fit the best. Now I should preface that I'll try and keep this ranking as objective as possible, but this is still a very subjective discussion, so it's going to include my own opinions too. So don't assume that my rankings
Alright.
are supposed to be word of law. And remember, a system's
Boom.
ranking doesn't accurately reflect an anime's quality. I'm
Now
just
we
looking at
make
the
this a
system
bit
itself.
smaller.
I also planned for this video to cover 20 different systems, but that was just way too long. So if you like this video, then make sure to subscribe so you can get notified when I drop part 2, which will cover the rest of the systems
So
that I don't
going
mention in
back-
this video. Also, if you're interested in joining a community
Okay.
to talk about anime, power systems,
Also, it
stories,
should
or
be
just to hang
going
out, then
this
head on
way
over
as
and join the
well. Oh,
Discord
speaking
server in
of
the
the Discord,
description.
you guys
New
can
members are
join
always welcome.
my
There's
Discord. I
obviously
don't
more
think
than
it's in the
just 20 systems
description,
out
but
there,
that's
but a
kind
lot
of
of them
sad.
are just based on the idea of magic.
Well, that's
So if an
good
anime just
animation
has
there.
magic as its primary system, that's something that I won't include. Like, I love Black Clover, but its system doesn't really make the cut for this video. With that said though, let's dive right into the first system on our list, starting off strong with Fire Force's Pyrokinetics.
Click here to make
Bro.
your very own monster unadapted mind.
No,
Where
no, no.
Fire Force isn't as
We
popular
all
as some of
hate
the
math.
other animes on this list, and even at first glance, its system looks pretty rudimentary, but it's
Alright.
actually a lot more complex than you might think.
You wanna
Pyrokinesis is the term
speed
for
this
the
up a
actual
bit?
power system, while pyrokinetics are the people who can use those powers. Essentially, this system is split up into
It
4
doesn't
different
need to be
categories: the first
completely the
generation,
same, you
second
know?
generation, third
Because,
generation, and fourth. Due to the Great Cataclysm
if
250
it looks
years ago that
exactly
introduced
the
elements
same,
of
people are
another
gonna think,
dimension
oh,
known
I'm
as the
just
Adola,
copying the
people
same
all over the
frame.
world began to suffer from a
What
condition
the hell
known as
is that
spontaneous human
animation?
combustion. When someone would spontaneously combust, their body would light on fire and their physical attributes would
Okay, let's
increase,
just
turning
make
them into
some
a
things
powerful monster fit
different.
for rampaging and destruction. These people became known as the Infernals, also known as the first generation pyrokinetics. There's a whole lore reason tied into the Adola for why this happens, but pretty much all you need to understand is that when someone gains pyrokinetic abilities, it's because a connection is formed between them in the real world and their doppelganger in the Adola. Now, while this connection most commonly creates Infernals, there are rare cases where it gives a person pyrokinetic abilities while still keeping their humanity.
Okay.
This is where we get the other generations, starting with the second generation pyrokinetics who have the ability to manipulate pre-existing flames. They can't make flames of their own, but they do have the ability to alter regular flames or the flames produced by third generations. Third generation pyrokinetics, on the other hand, can't manipulate flames like the second generations, but they have the
Okay.
unique ability to create flames from their own body or through a catalyst, like a sword or a
Barely
gauntlet,
looks
which is
any
known as their
different.
ignition ability.
It
Fourth gens,
straight
on the
up
other
looks
hand,
like
are
I just
extremely rare
copied
and
the
tie
same
heavily into
frame.
the Adola. As
That's
with this
kinda bad.
generation, users gain the ability
But
to
it
use
does
an
work.
Adola burst, which can literally alter the laws of physics. However, to use an
These
Adola
should be
burst, this
getting
person must also
squished
have an
down, I
Adola
guess,
link, which
since-
must be activated by
Yeah,
an Adola Grace, which can get a bit confusing. To dumb it down though, an Adola link is like having a car, and a Grace is like having permission to drive that car, while the burst is like actually pressing on the gas and going max speed. Now, just controlling and producing flames doesn't sound too crazy, but what makes the system so much more unique is what they actually define as flames, and how certain individuals can use different techniques. Karen, for example, is a second generation pyrokinetic. However, instead of just taking fire from his surroundings and throwing it at his enemies, his ability lets him take in enemy flames and attacks as kinetic energy and store it, and then release it at the right time for massive waves of damage. There's also Haumea, who can use her powers to create lightning-like energy, Corona, who can make armaments out of smoke, or even Joker, who uses condensed fire to throw playing cards, and all other kinds of characters with unique abilities that you wouldn't expect from a show purely about fire powers. I'll admit, the way that they explain some of these powers isn't super in-depth, but it's still fun to see the idea of flames being turned into so many unique abilities. Now, as for the other second generations, even though manipulating fire sounds weaker than creating it, these users are actually really good at fighting third gens because they can manipulate their flames, or even extinguishing them altogether if they're strong enough. With that said though, third generations are the real bread and butter of this series, as the main character Shinra is primarily a third generation who produces blasts of fire from his feet for insane speed and kicking power.
This is
There's
the
also other
same
powerful characters like
frame
Ogun and
here.
Arthur who can produce weapons and provide
Okay.
even more physical buffs with their flame powers, but these abilities generally vary from person to person without much consistency. Fourth generation are the wildcard powers though, like the ability to cool the entire universe to slow time as seen in show, or Shinra's ability to warp at light speed. Overall though, I think that this
And now
system
this
is
is where it
very
gets
unique and
really
interesting,
messy,
but I
seeing
definitely wouldn't
since
call it
this
perfect.
is basically
It's
a
very
still
stylized
frame
and a
here.
perfect fit for its universe, and the unique ways different pyrokinetics use their powers is always really fun to see. But from a power system standpoint, it leans a little too heavy into the randomness. It's very luck based if you even get a power and what type it would even be. So while the basics of pyrokinetics apply to all users, the
Right.
structural foundation isn't amazing, but I'd say it's pretty good for what it is. For that reason, I'll give Fire Force a 7 out of 10 in depth,
You guys
a
still
7
here?
out
I
of 10
don't
in
see
structure, and an
anybody
8 out of 10 in
talking
aura,
or
giving
anything.
pyrokinesis a total total 22
Maybe
out
my
of
chat
30.
is
This
glitched, but I
system
don't
does a
know if you
really
guys
good
are
job
here
of
or not.
making each character's abilities unique and different from one another, but in terms of consistency and rule following, things can often get a bit fuzzy in this show. And while the Adola and 4th generation users make for some really hype moments and interesting plot, it messes with the general scalability of the system a bit. But damn, I'd be lying if I said these powers didn't look awesome. Next up are the Demon Slayer breathing forms, which are a bit different than pyrokinesis. And while this system has its fair share of problems, it's honestly not that bad. In Demon Slayer, powers aren't really powers at all, at least not in the traditional sense. Demon Slayers use techniques known as breathing forms, which are methods of breathing that give them
Right.
superhuman abilities that correlate with their swordsmanship.
Um,
By breathing in a certain way, users can simulate different elements or ideas within
alright,
their
so
attacks. Within the
it
anime, this is
should be pretty
represented through
good
the
now.
portrayal of things like water, fire, or thunder flowing off a person's body and sword when
Kind of looks
attacking.
good
In all
without the
actuality
effects,
though, Slayers
honestly,
aren't
but
actually creating
yeah.
these elements, they're just moving in ways that simulate attacks with similar effects. There's a whole chart of techniques that different Slayers can use, and the cool thing about this system is that people can pick which one is best suited for their fighting style. Something like flame breathing is super intense and causes a lot of physical backlash, so a tough fighter like Rengoku can use it perfectly, while someone like Shinobu, who's a much smaller and fragile woman, wouldn't be able to use it at all. Instead, she uses insect breathing, which is much better suited for her body type and still lets her be incredibly powerful, even with her physical disadvantages. In her breathing form, there are a number of specific techniques that act as different attack patterns, such as a whirlwind of slashes, a giant arc cut, or even a focus-piercing jab. Users can also create their own forms and techniques with enough dedication and practice, like Inosuke who created his own beast
Okay,
breathing
now it's
form, or
going
Zenitsu who added on an
downwards.
additional technique for thunder breathing. While these forms aren't super complex, they shine in their
Wait, hold on.
versatility, as people can selectively pick which kind of techniques and forms that they want to use to make their own fighting style, which is something I really appreciate compared to more luck-based systems. I guess I also forgot to mention that there are the effects like the Red Nichiren Blade, Transparent World, and Demon Slayer Mark that all boost a Slayer's stats in some way, but overall those are kinda just tossed in there and don't change much about the system itself. Now with that said, the fact that these effects aren't real kinda sucks. They move like superhuman fighters,
real.
but they're really just strong
The
people with
moment I
swords.
found out
The
that Demon
animation and
Slayer
character
effects
designs make
doesn't
the
actually
fights
happen in the
absolutely
show,
incredible, and it
that
even
was a
goes far as
sad
to say
day
that
for
Demon
me.
Slayer has the best fight animation in all of shonen, in my opinion. However,
What?
since these effects aren't real and we're looking at the system itself and not just the characters, it's really
Sounds
not that cool.
crazy with
For
these
those reasons,
opinions.
I'm gonna give breathing forms a 4 out of 10 in depth, an 8 out of 10 in structure, and a 5 out of 10 in aura. The forms are honestly structured really well due to their simplicity, and it makes it really easy for characters to stay within the rules of the system. But overall, it's just not that complex or cool enough as actual powers, so breathing forms get a 17 out of 30. Moving on, it's time that we talk about one of the more complex systems, and this one's actually featured in the big three, because right now, we're talking about spiritual energy from Bleach. I've watched and read all of Bleach, and honestly before doing more research, I kinda thought that Reiatsu was just the catch-all for everything, but that's not exactly the case. After a bit of refreshing my memory, it turns out that there's actually 3 main power sources that everyone uses in Bleach. There's Ryoku, which is the sum of the potential energy in one's body, Reiatsu, which is the strength and pressure of one's Ryoku, and Reishi, which are the energy atoms that make up the environment. They don't really talk a lot about Ryoku in the show, and they mostly just say Reiatsu, so while they're different, a good way to think about it is that Ryoku is like the glass that determines how much water a person can have in it, while Reiatsu is the amount of water that actually goes into a glass and how concentrated that water is. So from here on out, I'm just gonna refer to power as Reiatsu. Reishi, on the other hand, is what makes up the environment of Soul Society, Hueco Mundo, and the world of the living, although it's far less concentrated there. Reishi isn't really that important for most characters, since the
now
majority
it's
aren't
moving
actually
kinda
human and can
fast.
expel Reiatsu from their body. But Quincy's,
So
however,
we're
are
gonna
human and can't
go
do
like
that,
this.
so they have to take Reishi from the environment and mix it with the raw power in their own body to form things like weapons and other Quincy powers. Honestly, I think making 3 separate categories for the term power itself is a bit much, but other than that, the system is actually pretty smooth sailing. It's complex for sure, but it makes sense. There's 4 main different types of fighters in Bleach. Soul Reapers or Shinigami, who originate from Soul Society, Arankars, who are from Hueco Mundo, Fullbringers from the world of the living, and Quincy's from the world of the living as well. Soul Reapers and Arankars pretty much use their powers in the same way. There's just different
Make
flares
this
for
fall
each
the
class.
same
A Soul Reaper's
line.
main power comes mostly from their Zanpakuto, which is a sword with insane abilities. There's the normal state, which is just a regular sword, then there's the Shikai, which changes the sword's shape and gives it a unique ability, and finally the Bankai, which fully releases the sword's natural state and often alters the user as well. It's also the peak of Soul Reaper powers, so Bankais are usually insanely strong. There's also other things Soul Reapers can do with their power, like Kido, which is pretty much just magical spells, Hakuto, which is enhanced hand-to-hand combat, as well as Flash Step and Ho-Ho, which increases movement and agility. I'm not going to do a very deep dive into Kido, but just know that those spells have all kinds of unique and complex uses that can be intertwined with other Soul Reaper powers as well. Arankars are very similar, but instead of Japanese names, everything is in Spanish.
Hey,
They
let's
also
see
have
how
swords
it
with a Bankai
looks.
style release called a Resurrección, and a few different Kido style spells like Sero and Bala, which are large blasts of energy, plus
You
things
guys
like
see how it's
Hyura, which
good?
is hardened skin, and Sonito, which is their form of Flash Step. Fullbringers, on the
It
other
kind
hand,
of
are a
looks
bit different
slow,
because they
doesn't it?
funnel their energy into certain objects
Looks
and
a little
transform them,
slow.
creating unique abilities that are far more of a wildcard
It
type
flows
situation than the
into it
rest.
good, but
However,
it
they
looks a
aren't as
little
important in the
slow.
series. Then finally, there's the Quincy's,
I
who are the
don't know,
most different,
man. It
as they use
looks.
Reishi instead of Reiatsu-based
Let's
power.
see the
However,
full
once
thing.
again, it's still very similar to the other powers, but now
Does
just
it
with a
look
German flair.
a little
Quincy's create
slow?
spirit weapons that are usually bows
I
and
don't know,
arrows.
man.
However, in the Thousand Year Blood War, many of the powerful Quincy's had different abilities. They
It's a
also
little
have a
slow, but
Bankai-styled
alright,
release
let's
called
just go with it.
Volstandig, a flash step move called Harenkakyu, and a multitude of other Keto-like spells as well. As you can see, there's a ton of different abilities each class can use, and it also has the perk of letting users choose what they want to specialize in. You might not get to pick your Zanpakuto's power, but the options for how you want to get stronger are actually very broad. You could be like Yoruichi and ditch the sword entirely, and just fight with lightning quick speed and power, or be like Urahara and become insanely powerful in every category. The possible
Alright.
abilities that this system lays out are so vast,
This
which
is my
makes every
base,
fight
but it
so
has been
unique
a
and fun to
month.
watch. It might be a bit more complex than it needs to be when it comes to the classifications of these powers,
You can
but in
take off
general the
Onion now.
complexity of this system is what makes it so cool. For those reasons, I'm going to give Bleach's system an 8 out of 10 in depth, an 8 out of 10 in structure, and a 10 out of 10 in aura, giving Bleach a total 26 out of 30. It could probably be a bit easier to understand, but once you understand the basics of this system, it just has so much to offer and it makes the fights absolutely incredible. Next up is a system from one of my favorite animes of all time, Attack on Titan with their Titan-based power system. Now I just want to say that regardless of the system, AOT is absolutely peak and you should totally watch it if you haven't, but looking at the power system as its own thing, that's a bit of a different story. Titans are the main form of powers in AOT, but there's only a select few characters with actual Titan shifting abilities. In total, there are 9 Titans with unique abilities, but since Titan powers can be
Are you
transferred
guys
from
just
person to
enjoying
person,
this
there's more than just
video
9
here?
characters in the
Because
series who are
nobody's
actually
saying
Titan
anything,
shifters.
but I
One of
know
the
at least
classics is
2
obviously
people.
Eren
I
Yeager's
don't know.
Attack Titan, which specializes in hand-to-hand duels, but the Attack Titan also scaled the hardest off of willpower, which made Eren a perfect fit. It also had the ability to view time all at once instead of just past, future, and
This
present,
film
but
looks
that's
so
more of a lore thing than a combat
weird.
power. There's also Reiner's Armored Titan, Bertolt's Colossal Titan,
Alright,
Porco's Jaw
let's see.
Titan, etc, etc. Unfortunately though, those who harness
Okay,
the
it
power of
looks
the Titans
better.
also gain the Curse of Ymir, a condition that limits their lifespan to only 13 more years after becoming a
But
Titan.
we're not
By
even done
inflicting
yet,
a
I
wound
think.
upon
Hold
oneself,
on.
Titan shifters begin to form flesh and bone around their human bodies that pretty much act as their organic mech suit that they can fight in. Shifting doesn't actually change a user's
Yeah,
body,
that's
it just creates
true.
more matter around them. Each Titan's power varies significantly, but all of them gain a massive boost in size, strength, speed, agility, and defense. Although some are much better at certain categories than others. Like how Reiner's Armored Titan is built for defense while Peak's Cart Titan is built for endurance. ODM gear is another major part of the series that regular humans use, but since it's technology,
Oh,
it
I
wouldn't really
missed
count
this
it as a
part.
power system. However, it's still really cool. There is one major weakness that all of these Titans have though, and it has to do with their neck. Except for the Warhammer Titan, who creates a crystallized shell and hides away in a safe location, every Titan shifter's main body resides in the nape of their neck, making that a prime spot for enemy attacks. I could keep going on and on about each Titan's details, but that's the basics of the system, and each Titan's additional abilities are less of a power system thing and more of a lore thing. Like at the very end of the series, Falco became a Job Beast Titan hybrid
This
due to
helps it
specific
not look
lore
like the
reasons,
same
so things like
frame.
that aren't very easy to quantify system-wise. Overall, AOT does have a lot more depth as a series than any other anime or show that I've ever watched, but if we're just looking at the power system in a vacuum, Titans are pretty simplistic. They're just 9 different organic mech suits that specialize in different things. For those reasons, I'm gonna have to give Titans a 5 out of 10 in depth, a 6 out of 10 in structure, and an 8 out of 10 in aura, giving AOT a total 19 out of 30. Aura is definitely coming in clutch for the Titans though, because no matter what the specific details are, the Titan battles in this show are just so fire. Moving on to number 5, we have one of the most talked about power systems as of right now, and of course, I'm talking about Cursed
Cursed
Energy. Jujutsu
Energy.
Kaisen is famous for a variety of factors, but undoubtedly one of the reasons that it's so popular is its well thought out power system. While Cursed Energy has its fair share of flaws, overall it does most things pretty well. Compared to something like Bleach's power system, which is very complex but sometimes a little tricky to understand, Cursed Energy does a really good job of having a nice in-depth system that is relayed to the viewer in a way that doesn't really trip people up. Cursed Energy is born from the accumulation of negative emotions created by everyday people. Every person in Japan has at least some level of Cursed Energy, and that Cursed Energy often leaks out of people to form cursed spirits. However, if someone is trained in the art of controlling their emotions, they can harness that Cursed Energy and use it for personalized abilities. When someone's emotions spike, the flow of their Cursed Energy will fluctuate too, so Jujutsu sorcerers must undergo heavy training to alter the natural flow of their Cursed Energy to be consistent. This lets users evenly coat their body in Cursed Energy for increased physical attributes, or sorcerers can move that energy around to specific body parts for specialized enhancement. The greater one's mastery over the flow of Cursed Energy in their body, the more that they can do
Let's
to
see how it's
utilize
looking
that
so
power.
far.
So even those with less Cursed Energy can still defeat those with
Okay.
more depending on how skilled each person is at controlling their flow. Now while Cursed Energy might be the base of the system, it's cursed techniques that are what really make this series so special. In rare cases, certain people people may be born with an innate technique, which is a form of sorcery either completely unique to them or a technique that runs through one's bloodline. Things like Megumi's 10 Shadows and Gojo's Limitless are both inherited techniques, while Toto's Boogie Woogie and Nobara's Straw Doll technique are unique to them. There's also the use of contracts and binding vows, which lets users manipulate their techniques by implementing certain trade-offs, which is a really unique aspect, although I wish that was actually utilized a bit more in the series. While techniques aren't the most interesting, since once again it's pretty luck-based, what I really love about this system is how it makes users get so creative with their abilities. Megumi can combine different Shikigami to suit whatever fighting style he may need, Choso can use blood manipulation in a different way in any fight if he wanted to, and my all-time favorite Toto has a technique that doesn't actually do any real damage, but through incredible battle IQ, his Boogie Woogie becomes insanely strong. For those reasons, I'm gonna have to give Curse Energy an 8 out of 10 in depth, a 7 out of 10 in structure, and a 7 out of 10 in aura. The complexity of this system itself really isn't that crazy, but each character's individual techniques are all quite well thought out and detailed. And while JJK is very strict about following its rules, over the time the series kind of began to stray away from its original structure, which isn't a huge deal in shows with less detail-oriented power systems, but for JJK specifically, there's times when things just don't make a whole lot of sense. But that's mostly manga stuff, and this is pretty much an anime-only list, so I don't want to dock it too many points for that. So overall, Curse Energy gets a solid 22 out of 30. Hey,
22.
I'm gonna jump back in here real quick because I don't know how, but somehow I completely forgot to mention domain expansions, which are such an important part of JJK as they're pretty much the peak of sorcery. Sorcerers and curse users can expel their cursed energy out of their body to create an area essentially of their dominion, and when they trap another person inside their domain, they can either create a new technique or an amplified technique that they already have to use on their opponent that will always hit. There's also the simple domains and new shadow style which can help combat this, as it makes a little mini domain that can counteract these sure hit effects and can be used by anyone regardless of their technique, which I don't know how I forgot about that either. And there's some really cool domains in the series, so I'm gonna have to bump the aura up by 1 point to give JJK a total of 23 out of 30.
I had to quit this phone. Oh, really? My phone is mute? What the heck? Bro.
Next up is Magi's Jin-based power system, which isn't nearly as popular as something like Curse Energy, but it has an incredibly stylized system that I think really makes the series shine. It's been a minute since I've actually watched Magi, but I definitely remember for being a show with some really unique flair and abilities. Turns out, there's actually quite a few similarities with the magic in this world and Reiatsu and Bleach. Basically, Rook is the foundational energy that makes up the world, and by giving commands to that Rook, pretty much anything is possible. To actually use the power of the Rook though, one must draw out the system's energy known as Magoi, which is the fundamental energy that makes all magic abilities possible. Then there's the magic itself, which manifests in different types of elemental forms. Even though there's 3 names, all you really have to understand is that the majority of all people only have a certain amount of Magoi in their body, which in turn dictates how much magical power they can use. But there's also the extremely rare characters known as Magis like Aladdin and Judar, which have the ability to use all the Rook around them as an almost endless energy source. There's also 2 different types of Rook, being the light and the dark Rook, which has its lore reasons, but it's pretty much just good guy powers versus bad guy powers. Now while there are certain people called magicians who can produce different types of common magic, if that's all this system had, I wouldn't even include it, as there's probably over 100 other animes with an identical system. What I think actually makes this series shine though and is far more interesting and relevant are the Djinns. Djinns are these massive blue godlike figures that each have control over a certain element or aspect of reality, and they reside within these large structures scattered across the world known as dungeons. When a person traverses through a dungeon by battling monsters and avoiding traps, they'll reach a final room where they get to meet the Djinn, where they are then rewarded with riches as well as becoming the master of that said Djinn. This Djinn will then apply a seal onto something that a user is carrying that they are familiar with, most often being a weapon and becoming what's known as a metal vessel. These vessels are actually really similar to Zanpakuto's in Bleach, as they have their regular form where they can just use some power based off the Djinn, then the partial Djinn equipped which transforms the weapon itself, then finally a full Djinn equipped which alters the user as well, much like a Shikai in Bankai. A Djinn equipped isn't the pinnacle of these powers though, as users can also create what's called extreme magic, which are the massive symbols in the air created through one's vessel, before expelling a massive spell or attack from that symbol. Personally,
yeah, Garou's small because it's a perspective shot. This is a big ass dragon.
So Magi definitely gets some points in my book for that. One person can also be the master of multiple Djinns as well. For example, Sinbad, who has a whopping 7 different Djinns contained on the metal vessels on his person, and one even has the ability to divide that Djinn's power into smaller fragments known as household vessels, which can be used by good friends of the master. So while this series has your plain old magic, which is just kind of whatever, each Djinn's unique abilities really make these powers far more interesting. For these reasons, I'm gonna give Magi's system a 6 out of 10 in depth, a 6 out of 10 in structure, and an 8 out of 10 in aura. The complexity of this system isn't too crazy, especially compared to many of the other systems on this list, but it is very stylistic.
Guys, the stream is delayed, okay? So if you say something, it might take me a while to see it.
It has a solid outline that's not bad by any means, but it's kind of floaty and lacks
I'll see it immediately,
because
but
people can kind of
you
just
will
do
hear
really strong
my
stuff if the story
thoughts on your
demands it.
comment
From what I've seen, that is, which is the anime from like 6 years ago, so I could always be a bit wrong. But man, the style and flair of each Djinn equipped and the Djinns themselves are something that I really just think is super awesome. So in total, Magi's system gets a 20 out of 30. It is one of my favorites, but
Very
objectively
interesting.
speaking, there are definitely better ones on this list. Moving on from Jins, we now have
Nah,
a system that
JK.
might be the
Alright.
most controversial on this list,
Hold
as it
on.
has a lot of discourse revolving around whether it's actually good or not, and that's quirks from MHA.
Okay,
Quirks
the
are kind of like
background
if you
one.
take the randomness from innate techniques in JJK and then dial that meter
It
up to
would
10.
be
They're literally just
below
completely
this.
random, with 80% of the population having
Okay.
at least some kind of quirk, and the other 20% just kind of get screwed.
7 is
There's
good.
not a lot of
7 is
explaining
good.
that I can really talk about for these quirks. It's pretty much either you get a power or you don't, and these powers themselves are super random. You might gain an insane power like Bakugo's explosion, or something practically useless like this guy's long nose. However, with that said, each individual quirk honestly has a lot of room for growth, and I feel like most people tend to overlook that. Even at the very start of the series, All Might mentioned that many people actually misunderstand their quirks on a fundamental level, which leads them to not unlocking their full potential, which is a concept that's actually explored beautifully in MHA Vigilantes. While the base system of quirks is nothing special, the individual training and awakening of different individual quirks is something that MHA actually does really well. MHA Vigilantes is literally a story all about that concept, as the main character Koichi turns a seemingly weak quirk into a top 10 pro hero level ability through understanding and training. And as for the main series, Bakugo goes from just creating explosions on his hands to storing up that power and releasing it in large bursts, then learning to fly from consistent blasts, and
Trying
eventually
to make
making
the
explosions
background
anywhere on
pretty
his body. And
detailed.
many of those level ups aren't just random power or friendship boosts. These advancements come from deliberate training and understanding of one's own quirk. Although I would be lying if I said that there wasn't at least a little bit of power or friendship magic going on to help out, but that's the majority of shonen. Another really great example of understanding a quirk's limitations and capabilities would have to come from my favorite character in MHA, Lemillion. Mirio's quirk permeation lets him turn untouchable and pass through objects, but it's in no way an easy to use quirk because every part of his body must be impermeable or physical at the right time. Otherwise, he might slip through the ground or slam his face into a wall. Through consistent training and understanding of his quirk though, he turned something that was
OPM
seemingly weak
season
into
3
an
kind of
incredibly
mid.
powerful tool that
Yeah,
led
it
to his
is,
rise
but
as a
I'm
hero.
still
While
excited
quirks
for
look
every single
incredibly simple
episode,
on the
genuinely.
surface, they actually have a lot more depth than you might think.
Like,
For
honestly,
that
I'm
reason,
still
I'm gonna
excited for
give
every
quirks a
episode.
6 out of
And
10
this
for depth,
episode
a
that's
5 out of 10
coming,
for
they say it's
structure,
going to be
and a
very
6 out of
good.
10 for aura. It's not the most complex system or anything, but each character's individual powers are a little deeper than you'd expect. But the
And Gara is
consistency
still
of these
my
quirks
favorite
can easily
character,
get thrown out
so
of whack due to the sheer amount of
yeah.
characters in the series. Same with aura. Obviously the massive characters have incredibly hype moments, but there's also just so many heroes with really boring powers and lackluster feats. So in total, quirks get a 17 out of 30. Next up is a much newer power system that I've actually been covering
Using
a lot on this
6
channel,
layers
and
so
that's the
far.
Vital Instruments from Gachiakuta. If you don't know anything about Gachiakuta, I'd highly suggest you read it because the manga is absolutely peak. The anime is pretty good too, but the manga art is just really hard to beat. Anyways, if you don't know though, Gachiakuta's power system runs off these things called Vital Instruments, or
Sakamoto
Jinkies
Days
in
is done right
Japanese.
now,
These
and
Jinkies
the
can be
last
any item
episodes
as
were
long as someone
fire.
cares for it deeply over a long period of time. Zonka is a
In
supporting character,
season
and also a
2.
great example of how a Vital Instrument
Okay,
is
let's
created.
color
When he was
everything in.
younger, he began training with a simple stick because he wanted to prove that the average man can become great
Darkish
even without talent.
background.
Over the years, he trained and took really good care of his stick until he became what's known as a giver, a person who has the power to transform their object into a vital instrument. This is done through thought energy, which is the main power source in
And
the
now we're
series,
going
although
to
little is
copy
still known about its
this,
true origins.
but
After a
make it a
person has
bit
cared for their
darker.
item long enough, they're able to funnel their thought energy into that object and transform it into something much stronger. This is often a weapon, like Zonka's stick turns into a bladed staff, or Engine's umbrella that turns into a spear and shield combo weapon. However, that's not always the case. Someone like Semiyu Greer, who isn't much of a frontline fighter, has a Jinki where her glasses expand and she can see a person's soul and witness their true nature. Or Isha, who can use her cord to guide electricity through someone's body and heal them. The really great thing about this system though is that it's not random. Whatever a giver wants their vital instrument to do, it becomes an object that can carry out that goal. I don't mean that they can change their ability on the fly, but if someone had a pair of shoes that they've kept since childhood, and they want the ability to be unrestricted by barriers and travel the world, those shoes could become a Jinki that lets someone teleport around, while the same shoes worn by someone with more malicious intent could become bladed ice skate style weapons meant for making large cuts. This isn't a perfect system for anyone that wants to be a giver though, as some people just can't seem to turn into one even if they try. There's a few somewhat recent developments in the manga that imply that there needs to be a catalyst for someone to activate their giver powers, and that seems to vary from person to person, but we still need more information on that before we can conclude anything. Some vital instruments can even be passed down through generations, increasing their power over time, and that's not even mentioning the Watchmen series, which are the most powerful vital instruments in the anime. But pretty much, all you need to know about this series is that they each have very unique abilities different than most Jinkies, and they're incredibly powerful. Overall though, I really like this system, and I think it's a really nice breath of fresh air compared to a lot of other shows. And for the reasons I stated, I think that I'll give Vital Instruments a 7 out of 10 for depth, an 8 out of 10 for structure, and a 7 out of 10 for aura. The depth isn't too crazy as it's mostly just enhancing an object and gaining a special ability, but the way characters use their abilities and the true nature behind their powers are more complex.
I wonder
and
if I
the
should
rules for
an
the system and
impact
the overall
frame. It
framework I
doesn't
think
need
is
one,
really well
honestly.
done. So this system gets a 22
And
out
it
of
wouldn't
30
be really
overall.
an impact frame.
Next
This
up, we're
would
going
be
to
a
move on
black,
to a system that has been around
a
for
black
many different
piece.
generations, and that's Dragon Ball's Ki. Now I'll be honest, I wasn't much of a Dragon
Okay.
Ball fan when I was younger, or even much of one now, so I didn't know too much about Ki before making this video. However, after researching a bit and looking it up, it overall seems pretty simple. Ki is pretty much just life force, and it's what lets powerful characters in the Dragon Ball
Alright.
universe perform the
Time
insane
to
feats that they do.
do...
It's made up of 3 main categories: Genki, which is vigor, Yuki, which is courage,
Okay.
and Shoki, which is right-mindedness.
This...
Or in other words, physical strength, emotional strength, and
Alright.
focus strength. Ki also has a few
Smoke.
different forms, such as the regular Ki, evil Ki, and godly Ki, which are kind of exactly what they sound
There
like.
should be a
Evil Ki is used
frame
by
in
villains with evil
between
intent, godly
here.
Ki is a much
So
more
we're going
refined
to
and
watch
powerful
an
type
ad
of
really
energy used by
quickly.
the higher level characters, and regular
We're
Ki
going to
is
have
just
to
regular.
watch
Certain
it
races in
very
Dragon Ball
big.
each have a
What's
rough
very
level of
big?
Ki that they're
The
born
dragon?
with. However, through intense training in
Yeah,
the
it
3
is.
categories,
If
people
you
can
mean the
significantly
dragon.
increase the amount of Ki in their bodies. A person's max level of Ki isn't just
Okay,
how
we're
much
going
they
to
can
watch
use
this
though,
ad, so let
as
me
to
put
be
this
able
up
to
here.
efficiently pull out that Ki and turn it into power, a user often has to undergo deep training and have either increased levels of focus or a spiked emotional state that causes their power to drastically increase. This is essentially what Super Saiyan
And the
does,
ad
as it
is...
raises the total
No,
amount of
please
Ki in
not
one's
this type of
body, but
ad.
it also
Please.
unlocks the ability to use more of that Ki instead of keeping it trapped away.
Please
As for what
play.
Ki can actually do, it's structured to pretty much be an
Okay, good. It's
all-encompassing tool
playing.
for a variety
Some
of
ads
uses.
reset my
Boosting
entire
physical
clip
stats like
because it
strength,
won't even
speed,
play and give me an
durability,
X
and
button.
senses are all very common uses.
Please
However, there's
play.
also the condensing of Ki for energy blasts like to shoot lasers or launch longer range attacks.
Bro, why is it not playing? I want to get back... Oh,
Turns out there's also a separate system known as magic that's not really related to Ki, but it
did it
seems
give
to
me
be
my frame?
far less in depth, and it's just there to make more abilities
Where's my
possible.
frame at?
There's many different techniques that specific characters in Dragon Ball can do with their
Where's
Ki,
my...
but overall to dumb it down,
Oh,
it's
here it is.
pretty much
Layer
just an
7.
energy force that can be increased
Okay.
by training one's
Between
body and
this,
mind. It's not
perfect.
the most complex by any
Alright.
means, but in terms
So
of
it
the show
should be
itself,
between
it doesn't
Garou
really
and
need
the
to be.
dragon.
After all, Dragon Ball wouldn't be so
Literally
popular if people didn't
perfect.
like it.
Alright.
For those reasons, I'm gonna give Ki a 3 out of 10 in depth, a 6 out of 10 in structure, and an 8
Wait,
out of
hold
10
on.
in aura. There really just isn't a lot going on for me to give it a higher score in
Alright.
depth, and its structure
Let's
is
put this
solid, but
here.
still wishy-washy at times from what I've
Put
read.
this
But this
here.
series really is just known for its hype moments and
Now,
aura, so that's where I'm gonna give it
let's
most of
do
its points,
this.
rounding out Ki to a 17 out of 30 overall.
And
We've
then
covered some pretty
copy
cool
this.
systems so far, but this next one's gonna be a bit of a
The
switch up,
last
because right
ad I
now we're talking
saw
about the hunter ranks
was
from solo leveling. Based on my rules from the
head.
start, it honestly doesn't make much sense to
YouTube
include
going
this system on the
crazy.
list, as it's pretty much
Oh,
just
like
magical
this
power.
just
But the
ads?
main
Yeah.
character is unique in
YouTube
that
is
he has his
crazy
own
with
power
the
system,
ads.
and I kinda just want to mention what the
Genuinely.
opposite of some of the great
I
systems
saw
on
an
this
ad
list
like
would be.
that too
Now
on
I
a
read the
game I was
entire
playing.
manhwa a while ago, and I'll say
Exactly
that the art
insane.
was fire, the
Alright.
fights were great, and many of the characters had really cool designs. But
Oh,
that's
no,
about
I
it.
lost
In the
it.
solo
Shoot.
leveling universe, only 0.1% of the
Alright.
population is even born with
Ah.
mana that gives them the unique ability to use
Oh, here it
magical
is.
powers. And the amount of mana that they're born with determines what their hunter rank is. The lowest rank is
Alright.
E, and it goes all the way up to
It has
S,
to
with
be
each
the
character
exact
becoming
same for the
exponentially more
colors
rare
to
the
flow
more that
into
you go
each
up the
other
ladder.
properly.
There is one level
Let's
above
put
S rank
this
though,
here.
known as the national rank. However, there are only 4 people on the planet that were national rank before Sung Jin Woo power fantasied his way up to the top. There
Of
are different
course he
kind of
did.
hunters though, such as the fighters, mages, assassins, tankers, healers, and rangers. And if you've ever watched any anime or played literally any video game ever, these are pretty self-explanatory. Higher
Alright.
level hunters often get more unique style abilities than the lower ranks though. Like 2 D rank mages will most likely have very similar attacks, while 2 S rank mages can have completely different skill sets and
Hey, this
attack
doesn't look
patterns. It
too
all just falls
bad.
under the category of spellcasting. And that's pretty much it. Once you have your rank, there's no changing it. There are very, very rare instances of hunters increasing their power, but for the vast majority of people, all the training in the world won't move your power an inch. That's why it's so unique for the main character Sung Jin Woo to be able to rise through the ranks, as he's given a completely different power system based on video game logic. His
Hold
system
on,
makes him
this
train to
does this
complete
look
tasks to unlock rewards like increased
dark
physical
enough?
stats, the ability to
I think
summon
it
armies
does.
of soldiers from defeated enemies, telepathy, powerful weapons,
Alright.
potions, items, you get the gist. So does it look
Hold
cool?
on.
Absolutely. But is it unique? No. Pretty much every other hunter is stuck with whatever power they naturally have, while Jinwoo has the ability to continue to get stronger and stronger until he absolutely smurfs on everyone else towards the end. My biggest issue with this power system though in the series as a whole isn't that it's just stagnant powers, but it's how all the other interesting characters get completely scrapped as the series goes on.
Yeah,
All of these S-rank
exactly.
hunters have insanely cool designs and powerful abilities that I always love seeing in
Exactly.
action, but as
I
Sung Jin
hated
Woo
how
got
the
more
character
powerful
just
than all
got
of them, it
scrapped.
made all of these interesting characters pretty much obsolete. I get that the whole point of the stagnant powers is to make Jinwoo's character special, but it really just makes so many other aspects of this system and series as a whole for that matter really weak. For those reasons, I'm gonna give
Exactly, I
Hunter ranks a
agree.
2 out of 10 in depth, a 4 out of 10 for structure, and an 8 out of 10 for aura. The aura and fight scenes are obviously the main focus
What do you
of the
guys
show, so
think?
it's gonna be
Didn't
decently
it, wasn't
high,
it
but
so
the
weird
structure
that all
isn't
the
great,
good
and the depth
characters
is
got
honestly super
scrapped in
shallow,
solo
leaving
leveling?
solo
Just
leveling
because
overall
Jin
with our
was getting
lowest rank of
stronger than all
14
of
out of
them?
30. We're now down to our final entry on this list, and for this spot, I'm gonna go with stands from JoJo's, another really cool power system that are infamous for their unique abilities. I'll do my best to explain the basic rules of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure system, but just know that
Bro, just because the people got strong, no, just because Jinwoo got strong, and then everybody else stayed at their same rank, everybody else got overshadowed while Jinwoo kept growing, bro. It was
the
so
overarching
annoying.
rules for stands are very wishy-washy and don't have a lot of hard
Alright.
limits, except for the fact that no stand can bring someone back to life. Stands are essentially the physical manifestation of a user's inner psyche, so the abilities and appearance of each stand vary
Alright.
heavily from person to person. To gain a stand, one can either be pierced with the stand arrow, they can be born with one, or they can acquire one later in life, but the details for how this happens are pretty vague. The majority of stands are humanoid figures that appear next to a person. Smaller creatures or objects that can go longer distances, and in rare cases, something
Alright.
completely different. But because of JoJo's bizarre
JoJo
nature,
versus
these stand
Solo's
abilities can
Jinwoo,
vary
really?
significantly,
Well,
so it's not
probably,
very
yeah,
easy
yeah.
to explain all 180 something
Maybe.
stands in a very concise manner. The majority of stands are all incorporeal unless attacked by another stand, although this rule does have its outliers. As long as a stand is fully connected to the user and not sentient or separated though, any damage given to a stand is reflected on the user's body, and vice versa. There are close range stands like Jotaro's Star
Alright.
Platinum, which excels in raw physical power and grit. Then there's the more range stand abilities like Okuyasu's The Hand, which can literally remove matters of space entirely. The thing is, there's not a lot of hard rules that cover every stand, but each person's
So-
individual ability is shrouded in possibilities and limitations.
This
And so much of
dragon,
the
like,
fun in JoJo's
nobody,
is watching
like,
what kind of
I made it
insanity
up.
people can pull off
Garou
by
never
figuring
did
out
this.
creative applications within
Never.
the rules of their stand. Like I mentioned earlier though, there are major exceptions to a ton of these rules. For example, there are stands who have their own sentience and can act independently of the user, or stands that don't seem
Garou
to fit
never
into the
did that
category of
move,
stands at
yeah.
all, as they don't seem to have real bodies. Not all stands are created equal, as some people just don't even have the ability to capitalize on their stand, even if it fits their personality, while some
Okay.
people are just blessed with really strong powers and capable bodies. So while I can't go much more into
Okay.
depth about stands overall, each
What do you
individual
mean,
stand has the
maybe
power for an entire paragraph of its own, and for that reason, I'm gonna give stands a 9 out of 10 in depth, a 4 out of 10 in structure, and a 10 out of 10 in
I
aura.
guess, yeah.
The basic structure is really all over the place, as stands really
That
vary
is
heavily
true.
from person to person, and as for aura,
I didn't
it's
even
obviously
think
gonna
of
be a 10 out of
D4C,
10, because that's
honestly.
kind of JoJo's whole thing. So overall, stands
But
get a
yeah, I
23 out
still
of 30.
could.
And
Tuscat
that's every system I've got for y'all
4.
today. I know some of you guys are going
Probably
to come at
even
me in the
Jotaro
comments for
with
not
just
including your
time
favorite
stop.
anime system, but
I
just
don't
wait until
think
part
Jinwoo
2
could.
drops, and if I still
I don't think Jinwoo could overcome time stop even if he wanted to, honestly.
didn't include an important one then, y'all can light me up in the comments, but I'm trying to make sure I cover all my bases. So make sure to hit that subscribe button to be notified when I release part 2. There's gonna be some classic hitters on there that I'm sure y'all can guess, and some that you might not expect, so you'll just have to wait and see. Also, as you could probably tell, I haven't seen every anime on this list. I've seen most of them, or at least bits and pieces, but some of these systems took a lot more research for me to understand. So if I missed some stuff or misinterpreted your favorite systems, I promise I wasn't intentionally hating. And just remember, I tried to keep this list as objective as possible, but these are still my opinions after all, so take them with a grain of salt. Oh, and also, go ahead on over to the description and join the Discord. We could really use some more members in there, and if you want to be part of this community, then you're
Okay.
welcome to stop on by. With that said
Oh my
though, that's about
God.
all I've got for you guys today. So I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and
Bro.
I'll see you in the next one. Peace!
This must not be closed
You
properly.
sent
Oh
in a
yeah, it
proposal,
isn't.
but your manager has
Is it
so
good now?
many
Oh my
questions.
god.
Uh-oh.
So annoying.
Let's try again with
Bro,
Grammarly.
shut up. Okay. What can we watch? Dispatch is fire. Hold on, I'm gonna read your comments soon. I got this. Select a new video. How female attack time change tapping time. Eh. Anime's greatest R formers rank.
Or
But
farming. What does it mean, really? Is
Yeah,
it
that's
skirting
what
your
you said.
responsibilities as the hero so everyone can see
hold
you
on, hold on, hold on. Yeah, Giorno solos him because he can literally put him in the loop. Oh yeah, right, true. Oh, Luffy's Sun God. What's good, bro? Have you read the manhwa of Solo Leveling? I tried to, but it wasn't my forte, bro. It was just colored and everything. I know some stuff that happened, but I no, not really. No, JoJo still solos. Yeah, it low-key does. Alright, let me play back this.
your enemy? Is it standing on top of the
Oh,
tallest
finally
structure you
worked.
can find with your arms crossed and your cape blowing in the wind so everyone can see your
Okay.
fit? Well, there's a lot of possible answers
Now I'ma
because there's
copy
as many
this,
ways to farm aura as
put it
there is
here.
ways to be powerful. Really, when it boils down to it, it's just about being cool. And there are a lot of ways to be cool. And in this era of an entire generation trying to be as nonchalant as possible, these aura
Okay.
farming characters seem to be popping up more and more. But aura farming has been a thing that existed in anime for nearly as long as anime has existed, with shows like JJPA,
Okay.
Dragon Ball, and Bleach having some of the most
Can you play
iconic
Nimbus
aura
Company,
farmers
please?
of all time. But when it
Play
comes
Nimbus
down to it, if you were to take all
I've
of the
heard-
aura
I think
farmers
I heard
across
about
all
that,
the different
but
generations of anime,
I don't think so,
who
man.
would be the greatest?
It's like a
today,
turn-based
that's the
game, I
question we're
think.
going to be trying to answer, because today we're
And I
talking
hate
the
turn-based
greatest aura
games with all
farmers in
my
anime,
passion.
ranked and explained. Now, before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional Nick video every single week, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using my fourth wall link in the description below. We're on to Kiba versus Naruto's second episode, and things are about to get stinky. All right, before we jump into this highly subjective list, I want to lay down a couple of rules here. One, yes, I understand that every MC of every power fantasy anime ever is a nonchalant ore farmer. I get that Honest Voldigold's got some crazy ore farming moments, like when he beat a guy who disrespected him just by having his heart beat. But
Let's see
I
how
don't
it looks
care.
so far.
All the characters on this list are going to be for what I identify as relevant and cool anime. Ore farming in a show specifically designed for you to aura farm, not all that impressive. On top of that, we're going to be taking into heavy consideration here the amount of aura
Looks good, I
farming one
guess.
does versus the amount of victories they acquire. Listen, I too could hit a couple of really cool emotes and pose before I got
Okay.
my shit knocked
Did
clean off by
did
Francis
everybody
Ngannou, but I don't necessarily mark that down as positive aura.
think
Now,
everybody
with
left.
those two very important rules out of the way here, let's get into the list. And starting off at our number 10 spot for the biggest aura farmers in anime, we have Gojo.
Oh, never
And
mind.
Gojo being at number 10 should give you a perspective on just how ridiculous this list is. Listen, I don't know if I can identify a moment
Okay,
with more aura
so-
than just your birth shifting the entire way the world works.
Okay,
Sorcery-based
that
villainy
is-
basically had to disappear the second that Gojo was born, because everybody in the entire world realized that if they continued to do bad things using sorcery, eventually that baby would come and get them. And then the first time that we ever see Gojo, he scraps with a one-finger Sukuna Yuji combo and absolutely lays hands on him after Potential Man can't do anything. So much so that mid-match, he literally busts out a pose and sits on Yuji's back. Not to mention he opens his fight, throwing his shopping bag to Potential Man, turning his back to Sukuna, who he just told to come out of Yuji, so that he could open the fight not looking at it. And then the next big fight that we see Gojo involved in, he's fighting Jogo, a person who's apparently as strong as 9 fingers of Sukuna, and Jogo surprise attacks him, launches lava and fire-based attacks at him at a continuous rate, and every single time when the fire dissipates, Gojo is standing exactly where he was before. He then beckons Jogo to come over to him and says, "Hey, try to touch my hand."
Drawing
And when
these
Jogo does, he
fast
can't
now.
get through his infinity, but then Gojo grabs Jogo by the hand, punches him in the stomach, launches him onto a lake, and decides that this guy is so much weaker than him, he's gonna go get his student and teach him about domain expansions because he knows Jogo can't touch him. He then hits Jogo with Infinite Void and decapitates him. He killed Hanami by walking at it. I mean, this is the man who got stabbed in the neck and almost gutted like a fish, floated himself into the air while golden sunlight was basking down on him, and then purpled a single father. Just an absolute high-level aura farmer. But could he go toe-to-toe in aura farming competition with the likes of our number 9 spot? I don't think so. Because
Jin was
coming
gonna
up at number
be
9
high.
on our list of anime's biggest aura farmers, we have Itachi. Listen, pretty much every single
I
thing that
guess.
Itachi has ever done has been done intentionally to be as nonchalant as possible. Now, that's because he was in a massive amount of pain and any and all movement hurt him in an excruciating way, but still, no one needs to know that but him. See, whether it was burning a hole in what Jiraiya identified as an inescapable toad stomach, Tarlin Kurenai, who was established as the greatest genjutsu in all of Konoha, that level of genjutsu doesn't work on me, and then flipping it back on her, flipping the body swapping technique on Orochimaru, forcing them to break their own pinky to get out of the genjutsu that Itachi was about to use to take over Orochimaru's body, or tricking Sasuke into believing that he had finally killed his older brother who eradicated their entire clan just to hit him with the hardest one of these of all time. And when you genjutsu
Alright.
somebody so hard that you are
Last-
literally still sitting in the
last
throne
one.
that you were sitting in a second
How
ago,
long
while they
have I been
grapple with some
streaming
kind
for
of
now?
invisible ghost that you conjured for them to fight, that is
How
all
long?
time aura. Not to
I
mention that
wanna
after
know how long I've been
Itachi
streaming
eradicated
for.
the entire Uchiha clan, he specifically posted up on top of the tallest telephone pole in all of Konoha so that Sasuke could see him and blame him for this genocide that he had enacted. I mean, this is a man who put Kakashi in a several-week coma with just a look. And in the light novels, Itachi is no different. Itachi wins his Chunin exams one-on-one fight by continually casting his opponent into such horrific genjutsu over and over and over again that eventually he just gives up. He is the only person in the history of genjutsu users to kill someone using genjutsu because he wanted to give his girlfriend who he knew he had to kill a full life with him. And thus she was the first Uchiha he went to on the night of the Uchiha massacre, and he used Tsukiyomi on her so that she could see the entirety of their lives together, after which she and he died of old age. But when she died of old age, she awoke from the genjutsu, and the shock of waking back up in her 13-year-old body literally stopped her heart. He fought Sasuke to the point of exhaustion on the brink of death, also that he could pull Orochimaru out of his little brother before he died. And in his final moments, he walked towards a defeated Sasuke with the ability to kill him if he had wanted to, just so that he could plink him on the forehead one more time. And when even in death you come out victorious, that right there is aura, which is why Itachi gets our number 9 spot. It is several days later. I had other more pressing videos to make. Anyways, when it comes down to it, while Itachi does have some of the most iconic aura farming moments in all of anime, he just doesn't have the volume to keep up with a lot of people on this list, especially our number 8 spot, because coming up at number 8 on our list of anime's greatest aura farmers, we have Killua. Listen, if you want to be a truly great aura farmer, it can't just be moments. It has to be your lifestyle. And in every single opportunity Killua has ever been afforded, he has lived that lifestyle. Whether it's standing on the back of galloping horses as Gon directs them through a valley, keeping his hands squarely placed in his pocket as him, Killua, Gon, and Leorio plummet off a cliff, effortlessly breaking the chains that were used to hold him down after the Phantom Troop kidnapped both him and Gon, drawing a lightning circle around an unconscious Komogi and then gouging out the eye of an incoming poof, one of the royal guards of Meruem, mind you, effortlessly in the blink of an eye decapitating Rammet, one of the most annoying out of the Chimera ants, or being legitimately the only person in the entire universe who stood a modicum of a chance against Yuppie. And listen, him walking down into the crater to meet Yuppie and turning on Godspeed, I mean, that's the definition of aura. But here's the thing, we probably always should have known that this is exactly who Killua was going to be. I mean, this is the child who in the Trick Tower ripped out the heart of one of the most notorious serial killers on Earth, put it in a paper bag, and gave it back to him. How did you even think of that? Did you
video is doing
paper
pretty
bag?
good.
Was it actually just a part of the serial killer's t-shirt? Is that worse?
The
I
YouTube video
don't
is
know,
doing
but it's
2K
insane.
views.
And then to have the audacity to be humble about it and be like, oh, when my father rips people's hearts out, there isn't even a drop of blood. Buddy, you just dove through somebody's rib cage, ripped out their still beating heart, and gave it back to them.
11
That's
views.
good enough.
Really?
But does he have
That's
as much
terrible.
aura as this necklace I'm wearing right here? Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, I am wearing a piece from my girlfriend's lovely anime collection over from Flair & Co. Accessories. And she's
11
dropped
views
a
is
collaboration
terrible.
jewelry line with me, which features a ton of anime pieces. All of the pieces are under $35. They're all tarnish-free, rust-free, and hypoallergenic, and they're all available in both gold and silver. If you've ever wanted to stylishly show off that you're a weeb, there's never been a better set of accessories than these right here. So how about the Connor Dangs family and pop on over to Flair & Co. today to get you some pieces. But when it comes down to it, I don't think anybody lives the lifestyle of aura farming harder than our number 7 spot. Because coming up at number 7 on our list of the greatest aura farmers in anime history, we have Dio. I mean, outside of the fit alone, this man is aura farming so constantly that he can't walk or stand regularly. Not to mention, I mean, everyone in JJPA is constantly mocking each other. They have chins of the gods. I don't think we've ever caught Dio from a bad angle. And that's probably because his stand, the world, allows him to stop time so that whenever he snaps time back into place, he gets to be in whatever his baddest position is. But does he use his stand for regular time-stoppy things? Well, I guess, like, kind of. He'll punch somebody a bunch while time is stopped and then start time again, and their body will get riddled with punches, throw an entire battalion's worth of knives at somebody, and a bunch of other regular time-stop combative stuff. But he also uses the world to just kind of mess with people. Like when he told Polarinov that if he took 2 steps up the stairs, he would come to fight him, but if he took 2 steps down the stairs, well, then he would rejoin his side. And even though Polarinov takes the initiative to walk up the stairs and fight Dio, Dio literally just spams the world and keeps moving him downstairs and is like, oh, you want to join me? That's aura farming. I mean, it's mean, but it's still aura farming. Amid Dio's house being set ablaze, he shirtlessly walked up his wall with a hand in his pocket and a smile on his face. He's objectively insane. Now, I'll admit, I haven't seen as much JJBA as I have the other anime, anime whose characters are on this list. So some of you JJBA diehards might believe that Dio is way too low on this list. And here's the thing. I acknowledge the fact that Dio lives the aura farming lifestyle. I just don't have as many instances as I would like to put him all that high on the list. But I can not say the same thing for our number 6 entry, because at number 6 on our list of anime's greatest aura farmers, we have Madara Uchiha. I mean, where do we even start? Honorable mention to Obito here. He doesn't have like a ton of moments, but him switching from his Toby to Madara voice and going, "Just kidding," or his white mask Obito feeling water on his neck and goes, "Am I perspiring?" And then it begins to pour, and Obito says, "Oh, of course not. These idiots could never make me sweat." I mean, those are some of the hardest moments in anime, period. But getting used by like multiple different people and then getting disintegrated by an Ash out killing bone, bad aura. And it's not like Madara goes out in the most dignified way, but he goes out better than Obito did. And where do we even start with Madara? Madara stood out in front of the entire Shinobi Alliance. 80,000 shinobi from 5 different ninja villages and the Land of Iron. And 80,000 shinobi hesitated to rush him. He then proceeded to, in his weakest form, mind you, lay hands on anyone who got even remotely close to him. His fire release that he launched at the Shinobi Alliance needed to be blocked by dozens of high-level water release users. And when they were all patting themselves on the back that they were able to stop one man's fire release, they realized that there was a flurry of fire comets coming their way that they could do next to nothing about. He blocked a big ball Rasengan from Sage Mode Naruto with Justice Susanoo Ribcage. He let the entire Shinobi Alliance believe that the combined forces of Inoki and Garou were enough to stop a meteor he threw at them, just to reveal he could throw a second. He semi-purposely let Might Guy kick him with Night Guy to see if he truly was the strongest taijutsu user of all time. And after the strongest taijutsu user of all time used the 8th gates and his strongest technique, Madara was fine. He got hit by a kick that bent space-time and lived. The Sage of Six Paths, the literal god of Shinobi, looked at Madara and said, "Yeesh, he's getting real close to me." He literally smacked every single one of the tailed beast the second he got one of his Rinnegan, and then he yoinked them into the ghetto statue. He asked the 5 Kage in a 5v1 if they wanted his clones to use Susanoo. And what's worse is that wasn't the really important question. The actual important question is, do you want me to use my perfect Susanoo? To which their answer should have been no. This man was the boogeyman of the Naruto world.
I think it looks better without a glow.
And for that, he gets our number 6 spot. But unfortunately, sometimes even the greatest old heads are surpassed by the new gen aura farmers, which is why at number 5 on our list of anime's greatest aura farmers, we have Sun Jin Woo. Now listen, I know I said I was going to be doing any MCs from Power Fantasy anime like the Irregular at Magic School
very slow. 10 out of
I'm a Demon at Demon King Academy or whatever that.
Yeah, that's it, man. I'm gonna end the stream now.
It's actually good. And like,
hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna end the stream now, man. Oh, jeez. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and late. Oh, here it is. How much time? All right, late, man. Boom, and